The morning sun slipped through the white plantation shutters of our Georgia kitchen, casting long golden lines across the polished marble countertops. The house smelled of fresh coffee and toast, familiar, comforting, sterile. Dad sat at the head of the table, eyes buried in the latest financial section of the Wall Street Journal. He didn't look up when I walked in. He rarely did anymore. Mom stood by the espresso machine, swirling her spoon around in her cup like she was conducting a silent symphony no one else could hear. Across from them, Ryan, my older brother, scrolled on his phone, pausing every so often to check his reflection in the toaster's chrome surface. He had just been hired at his dream law firm downtown Atlanta. Everyone was excited, everyone except me. I held the invitation in my hand, the thick envelope with MIT's seal, my graduation. I took a breath and stepped forward. "Mom, Dad," I said, placing the envelope gently on the table. "My commencement is next Saturday. I'd really like you to come." Dad didn't look up. He just reached for his coffee. "There's a bus from here to MIT, isn't there?" he muttered. "We've got to take Ryan to check out the new Porsche that morning. He's had his eye on the Taycan Turbo." I blinked. Mom offered a tight smile, like she was trying to be warm but couldn't quite reach it. "You know how important this is for your brother, sweetheart. First impressions matter, especially now that he's up for junior partner. This Porsche could help him look the part." I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice to hold. 4 years of straight A's. 4 years of sleepless nights coding until my fingers cramped. 4 years of quietly building my own tech firm in the shadows of my studies. And all they could see was Ryan's Porsche. I forced a smile. "Of course, he should go. I'll figure it out." Dad finally looked up, glancing at me like someone might glance at a waitress bringing the wrong order. "Besides," he added, "it's not like you've got a whole cheering section showing up. No boyfriend, no fancy job lined up yet, right?" I nearly laughed. They didn't know about the 7-figure offer I'd turned down. They never asked why I didn't need student loans. Never wondered how I lived alone in Cambridge, or how I funded what they thought were little side projects. Because they never asked. They never asked what I did in the hours between classes. Never asked how I spent my summers. They never even asked what Caldwell Innovations was, just assumed it was a hobby. But that was okay. I walked out of the kitchen with the invitation still unopened on the table, its gold lettering catching the light like a secret no one noticed. Back in my apartment that night, I stared out at the Boston skyline, clean, bright, full of possibility. I opened my laptop. Notifications flooded in. Caldwell Tech, valuation updated to 12.5B after Series C funding round closes. MIT confirms recognition speech by Dean for historic contribution. Forbes, can Caldwell's AI disrupt the quantum security landscape? They didn't know, but they would. And when they did, it wouldn't be because I told them. It would be because the whole world was watching. And this time, they wouldn't be able to look away. Boston at night had its own kind of heartbeat, steady, pulsing, full of secrets humming beneath its glass towers. Back in my apartment overlooking the Charles River, I kicked off my flats and dropped my keys on the counter. The silence here wasn't empty. It was mine. It was earned. The kitchen lights blinked on with a motion sensor. My AI assistant, Cam, greeted me in her soft British voice. "Welcome home, Samantha. 3 new investor updates, 1 from Forbes, and the board has moved tomorrow's vote to 8:30 a.m. Shall I confirm?" I nodded, confirm it, and pushed the Morgan call to the afternoon. Cam responded instantly. "Done. Also, your crypto portfolio is up 8.2% overnight. Estimated net gain $71.3 million. I smiled, but only faintly. These numbers didn't impress me anymore. They were proof of work, silent work, the kind no one ever asked about. While Ryan was being celebrated for making partner at 28, I'd been quietly running a quantum AI company in stealth mode. Caldwell Tech now employed over 19,000 people across 5 countries, and yet to my family I was just Sam, the quiet one, the daughter without a boyfriend, the girl who took the bus. It's not that I hadn't tried to share. I remember telling Dad once about a patent I filed for data stream encryption via deep learning clusters. He blinked and said, "Why don't you get a job with Amazon? They've got good benefits." That's when I stopped talking. Because it wasn't just that they didn't understand, it was that they didn't want to. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus, the head of our European division. "Samantha, the Zurich pilot exceeded projections. We're ahead of schedule on neural optimization. You'll want this in the deck tomorrow." A few years ago, I wouldn't have believed this was my life. But I'd stopped asking for permission a long time ago. Later that night, I sat on the balcony barefoot, a glass of Pinot in hand, watching the city below sparkle like code running across a motherboard. I thought about the girl who once asked her parents to come to her science fair and was told, "Let's see how Ryan's schedule looks first." I let that memory sit for a moment, not out of bitterness, but because it reminded me why I built what I built. The silence they gave me, I filled it, with code, with vision, with ambition they never saw coming. They never asked how I paid my tuition, never asked why venture capital firms were calling me by sophomore year, never noticed the Bugatti parked in the underground garage listed under my company's holding account. And honestly, maybe I liked it that way. Because now, on the eve of graduation, I wasn't just a student. I was the storm they never saw on the radar. Cam's voice came through the speaker again. Miss Caldwell, Dean Langston has confirmed your speaking slot at commencement, and the New York Times would like to confirm your feature headline, The Silent Billionaire. I exhaled. Confirm both, I said, then added, and order the Chanel. The one I'd wear under my graduation robe. The one they wouldn't expect. The one that would remind them that just because I didn't shout didn't mean I wasn't worth hearing. Tomorrow I'd walk across that stage not to prove anything, but to reveal everything. The morning of graduation arrived like any other in Boston. Sky streaked with pale gray, the air crisp and promising. But for me, it felt different. It felt inevitable. I woke before my alarm, not because I was anxious, but because I'd waited 4 years for this exact moment. In my closet, hanging alone under a soft spotlight, was the suit. Midnight blue Chanel couture, tailored in Paris, delivered discreetly 2 weeks earlier. I ran my fingers along the lapel, clean, strong lines, powerful without shouting. Just like me. Over the suit, I pulled on the black graduation robe. Standard issue, polyester, ordinary. It covered everything underneath, and that was the point. Let them assume. Let them keep believing I was just another girl who took the bus. The drive to campus wasn't long. My Koenigsegg Gemera, matte silver with cream leather interior, purred softly beneath me. I'd parked it away from the main entrance, behind MIT's AI lab, where few would think to look. That's how I liked it. As I stepped onto campus, waves of families flowed around me. Hugs, laughter, bouquets of flowers and camera flashes. I walked alone. But not lonely. A group of undergrads waved and called my name. My professors nodded with quiet respect. My assistant texted. Cambridge Courier confirmed Forbes photographers at the West Gate. Dean Langston is rehearsing the announcement now. All is ready, Miss Caldwell. I typed back one word, perfect. From my seat near the front row of graduates, I scanned the crowd. And there they were. My parents and Ryan had just arrived, stepping out of a bright red Porsche Taycan Turbo, polished like a trophy. Dad straightened his cufflinks. Mom smoothed Ryan's tie. Ryan, of course, was taking selfies, his car gleaming in the background. They looked every bit the American success story. And not once did they notice me. That was okay, they would soon. The ceremony began. Speeches, applause, names being called. I sat quietly, hands folded, my heart beating not from nerves but from timing. This wasn't about revenge, it was about recognition. When Dean Langston stepped forward again and cleared his throat, I knew it was time. Before we proceed with conferring degrees, he began, voice strong, steady, we'd like to take a moment to recognize an extraordinary achievement. The room shifted. People leaned forward. Phones lifted. Today, among us sits not only a graduate but a revolutionary, a mind that has redefined the future of artificial intelligence, quantum security, and global tech leadership. My parents were now looking up from their programs. At just 24 years old, she is the founder and CEO of Caldwell Tech, a multinational company currently valued at over $12.5 billion. Her innovations employ over 19,000 people, and today, she becomes the youngest private donor in MIT's history, with a contribution of $1.8 billion to science and technology advancement. Gasps echoed. Heads turned. And then, please welcome Samantha Caldwell. I rose slowly, removed my robe. Let the Chanel speak. Let everything speak. I walked toward the stage, heels clicking against the floor like punctuation marks. With every step, the silence I'd lived in for years broke apart. And when I looked into the crowd, I saw them. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad sat frozen, his phone still in his lap. Ryan, eyes wide, jaw slack, lowered his sunglasses for the first time that day. No one said a word. But they were finally seeing me. The spotlight wasn't harsh. It was warm, gentle, like it knew this wasn't a moment for flash, but for truth. I stood at the podium, breathing in the stillness. Hundreds of faces looked up, waiting, some expectant, some stunned. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at 3 faces halfway back in the audience. My father, who had just put down his phone. My mother, frozen mid-clap. And Ryan, still gripping the Porsche key fob like it might anchor him to reality. I smiled, not wide, not smug, just steady. Thank you, Dean Langston. And thank you, MIT, for not just giving me an education, but for giving me space. A pause. 4 years ago, I walked onto this campus with a duffel bag and a prototype algorithm no one had heard of. While most people were figuring out housing and roommates, I was building a company, Nights after class, weekends, holidays. I coded, I failed, I tried again. The audience was silent. I let it hang, then continued. While some were shopping for internships, I was shopping for server space. A few laughs, nervous ones, then nods. While some were dreaming about job offers, I was busy making payroll for 30 employees across 3 time zones. A flicker of recognition crossed a few professors' faces. They'd wondered how I was always so composed, why I never needed academic funding, why my projects came with NDAs. And while others were picking out suits for job interviews, I was negotiating my 5th funding round. This time, a few gasps. My name was still echoing in the room. People were connecting the dots. The whispers were growing. You see, I didn't take the bus to graduation because I had to. I turned slightly, just enough to let my voice reach them. I took it because while others were focused on what they were driving, I was focused on where I was going. Cameras clicked, journalists scribbled. My name trended on screen behind me as the slideshow began. Images of Caldwell Tech offices in Berlin, Tokyo, San Francisco. Snapshots of product launches, my team, my first investor check. And finally, the photo from 3 weeks ago, me shaking hands with a NASA administrator. The caption, Quantum Encryption for Deep Space Missions, Caldwell Tech approved. My mother's hands trembled. My father sat forward. Ryan lowered his phone. I didn't tell many people what I was building, I continued, because sometimes the world doesn't need your pitch, it needs your results. Another pause. Then came the final image, an aerial shot of the Caldwell Tech Research Center, right across the river in Cambridge. To those who measure success by appearances, by salaries, by cars, I said softly, I invite you to look deeper. Because real innovation doesn't drive up in a Porsche. It builds the infrastructure Porsche will one day rely on. I smiled again. And to my family who's here today, thank you. Your silence gave me the space to find my own voice. That one landed. I stepped back from the mic. The applause started slow, then swelled, louder, stronger. No one was clapping harder than my peers, the ones who saw the late nights in the library, who'd assumed I was just overachieving. Now they knew. As I returned to my seat, Cam buzzed in my ear. Forbes cover photo confirmed. Also, Elon Musk just retweeted your speech. Caption, that's how it's done. I smiled, sliding into my chair. And behind me, 3 people I'd known my whole life sat speechless. For the first time, they saw me. The ceremony ended in a blur of applause, handshakes, and camera flashes. Graduates threw their caps, professors hugged, photographers swarmed. And through all of it, I stood still just for a moment, letting it settle, letting them catch up. I walked slowly toward the courtyard where my car waited. Forbes photographers were already in position, the light catching just right on the Koenigsegg's crystal white finish. But before I reached them, I heard my name. Samantha? It was Mom. Her voice cracked like an old record that hadn't been played in years. She rushed forward, eyes glassy, clutching her purse like it was the only thing holding her together. Dad followed behind, slower, still trying to understand what had just happened. And Ryan, well, he lingered a few steps away, arms crossed, Porsche keys dangling from one hand like a security blanket. I turned to face them fully. Mom blinked through her tears. How? When did all of this... I tilted my head gently. Years ago, Mom, while you were asking if I'd met a nice boy, I was pitching to venture capitalists. While you were helping Ryan choose ties for court, I was coding encryption protocols for deep space communication. She looked stunned. Why didn't you ever tell us? I paused and smiled, but not bitterly, just honestly. Because every time I tried to share, you changed the subject. Every time I brought up my company, Dad told me to find a real job. Every time I mentioned a project, someone asked if I was still single. Dad stepped forward, voice low. Sam, we didn't know. We thought you were just figuring things out. I replied, figuring out how to raise capital, hire staff, file international patents, balance a company while getting a 4.0 GPA. His mouth opened, but no words came. Ryan finally spoke. You're a billionaire? His tone wasn't awe. It was disbelief. You're my little sister. I met his gaze steady. I am, and also the CEO of the company that developed the software your firm now uses for digital contract encryption. Ryan froze. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. Just the truth was enough. My assistant approached from behind, holding a sleek black tablet. Miss Caldwell, Mr. Musk is on hold, wants your take on the satellite encryption interface. Dad's eyes widened. Wait, Elon Musk? I glanced at the tablet, then back to him. Tell him I'll call back. I'm having a family moment. Mom wiped her cheek. Your grandmother knew, didn't she? I smiled, this time with warmth. She asked me what I was building, instead of telling me what I should be doing. She was my first investor. Mom covered her mouth. She believed in you. Yes, I said quietly. She always did. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, necessary. Then I stepped forward, pulled out a card, and handed it to Dad. Black, minimalist, just my name, and Caldwell Tech embossed in silver. Dinner's at 7, the penthouse. The driver will take you. I already had the jet bring Grandma in from Savannah. As I turned to leave, I looked at Ryan one last time. Oh, and maybe park the Porsche in the back. Security needs the front for the Forbes shoot. He didn't reply. Didn't need to. The look on his face said everything. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime at the 64th floor. My penthouse bathed in golden hour light, the Boston skyline glowing like a painting behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, my team from Caldwell Tech was already packing up equipment from the Forbes shoot. Laughter echoed faintly from the other side of the glass walls. Cameras, lights, makeup brushes, all gone now, leaving behind only silence, space, and truth. I stood alone for a moment at the bar, pouring a glass of Dom Perignon and listening to the low hum of the city below. Then the front door clicked open. Mom entered first. She looked smaller somehow, not broken, just quieter. Behind her, Dad scanned the room like he wasn't sure if he belonged. Ryan trailed behind, unusually silent. And finally, Grandma. She smiled the moment she saw me, the kind of smile that says I always knew. "You clean up nice," she whispered, hugging me like I was still that little girl with a laptop on her knees at family dinners. I led them into the dining room where the table had been set. White linen, crystal glassware, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. No extravagance, just clarity. They sat down slowly, unsure of where to begin. So I did it for them. "Thank you for coming." Mom's eyes welled. We had no idea, Samantha." "I know," I replied gently. But I wasn't hiding, I just stopped explaining. Dad set down his napkin. "All those years, we thought you were lost, wandering, but you were building," I finished for him. In silence, because sometimes silence is where vision grows. Ryan leaned back, exhaling. "You really built this, all of this, on your own?" I met his eyes. "Not alone, just without you." It wasn't spite, it was simply fact. They didn't argue, what could they say? Grandma raised her glass. "To the one who took the bus, because she didn't need to be driven. She knew where she was going." We clinked glasses. The sound rang clean and soft in the high ceilings. After dinner, I led them out to the balcony. From here, you could see the Charles River curve like ribbon through the city, MIT glowing faintly in the distance. Mom leaned into the glass. "I never asked what you were building." "No," I said gently. "You asked who I was dating, if I was eating enough, if I'd thought about law school." She looked down. "I was trying to protect you." I nodded. "I know, but sometimes protecting someone means limiting what they might become." Dad stepped forward, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "We were wrong. We let our version of success blind us to yours." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at the view. "You don't have to apologize," I said finally. "I didn't do this to prove anything to you. I did it because I saw something no one else could, and I couldn't wait for permission to chase it." As they left that night, quiet, thoughtful, changed, I stood by the door, watching their figures retreat into the elevator. Grandma stayed behind for a minute, her hand in mine. "You know," she said softly, "there's power in not being seen, until the moment it matters most." I nodded. She was right. Later, I stood on the balcony alone, a second glass of champagne in hand. Below me, the Porsche pulled away from the valet. My Koenigsegg sat untouched beside it, still gleaming. I raised my glass, not in bitterness, not in pride, but in peace. To the silence that shaped me, to the bus rides that grounded me, to the empire that no one saw coming. And most of all, to becoming so undeniably right they could never see me the same way again. And sometimes what you need isn't recognition. Not the applause, not the proud glances, not even the late apologies. Sometimes, you just need silence long enough to write yourself into your own story. She was once the girl on the sidelines, the quiet one, the daughter who didn't have a plan, the one no one saved a seat for at graduation. But in that silence, she built an empire the world couldn't ignore. No shouting, no showing off. Because real success doesn't beg to be seen, it just becomes impossible to look away from. If you're quietly working toward something, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or overlooked, let this be your reminder. The truth will speak, louder than you ever need to. Thank you for staying until the end of the story. If you saw a piece of yourself in this journey, hit subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Because sometimes all it takes is the right story at the right moment to remind you that you're not alone.